I was 78. My son Michael was 50. And we had known each other his entire life without ever really talking. Now, we were not estranged. Nothing dramatic. He called. He visited at Christmas and on my birthday. We talked about the truck, the weather, his kids, and the ball game. 40 years of perfectly pleasant conversation with absolutely nothing in it. Then one evening in October, he stayed after dinner when everyone else had gone, and we sat at my kitchen table for 1 hour. 1 hour, gentlemen. And at that hour, we said things to each other that we had been carrying separately since he was a boy. That hour is the most important thing that ever happened to me. More than any job, more than any trip. And tonight I am going to tell you exactly how it started, exactly what came out of it, and how you can have this same hour with your own son or daughter, because most of you are one sentence away from it and do not know it. The thing he said about 40 minutes in, I still cannot repeat it without stopping. I will get to that one. Stay with me. If you are over 65, comment on the state you are watching from. I read every one. Here is how it started. It started because I broke a rule I had followed for 50 years. Michael helped me with the dishes. And out of nowhere, he said something about his own son, my grandson, being difficult lately, and he laughed and said, "I guess I do not know what I am doing as a father." Now, the old me had a response ready. The old me would have said, you are doing fine. Reassure, redirect, move on. That is what men my age does. We manage a moment like that the way you manage a hot pan, quickly, and then you set it down. But I was tired that night, and I was 78, and something in me was done being careful. So instead, I said the true thing. I said, "Neither did I, son. I made it up the whole way through, and I got a lot of it wrong." And Michael put down the dish towel. That is the sentence, gentlemen. That is the whole key I am giving you tonight. Not a heart-to-heart, not a speech, not a planned conversation. One admission of imperfection from the father, aloud, unprompted. Because here is what I did not understand for 50 years. Your children cannot go first. They physically cannot. To your child, even a 50-year-old child with gray in his beard, you are still the authority in the room. They will not open a door you have kept shut. They will wait their entire lives for permission, and if you never give it, they will stand at your funeral holding everything they never said. The father must go first. Boys. Even at 78. Even at 85. So, he sat back down at that table, and the next thing he said cracked me open. The first thing that came out was his. He had spent 40 years wondering if I was proud of him. I have mentioned this before, and it is still the hardest sentence anyone ever said to me. He said, "Dad, I never knew if I made you proud. You never said." Now understand, I was proud of that boy every single day of his life. I told everyone. The men at the shop. The barber. Strangers in line at the hardware store all knew that Michael had made foreman, that Michael bought his own house, that Michael was raising good kids. Everyone knew except Michael. And when he said it, my first instinct was to defend myself. I could feel the words coming up. "Son, of course I was proud. I went to every game. I paid for that first car. I showed up." All true. All of it is true. But then something stopped me, and it is the most useful thing I learned in that entire hour, so listen closely. I realized he was not accusing me of anything. He was telling me about a hole. And you do not argue with a man about whether his hole is there. You do not answer a wound with evidence. So, I did not defend. I said, "I was proud of you every day. Every single day. And I am sorry I never said it aloud. You should have heard it from me." He cried. A 50-year-old man, at my kitchen table. And gentlemen, if you take only one thing from tonight, when your child finally tells you what hurts, do not bring out the receipts. Do not list what you provided. Just say, "You should have heard it from me." Those 7 words are worth more than 40 years of evidence. But then it was my turn. And what came out of me surprised us both. The second thing that came out was mine. I had been carrying a private shame about the years I was never home. I double worked for most of Michael's childhood. 6 days a week for a stretch of about 9 years. I told myself then and every year after that I was providing, and I was. But underneath, quietly, for 4 decades, I carried a conviction that I had missed his boyhood and could never get it back. I had never said that to a living soul. Not to my wife. Certainly not to him. So, at that table at 78 years old, I said it. I said, I was gone too much when you were small. I have thought about it every year since. And Michael looked genuinely confused. And then he said something that rearranged 40 years of my private history. He said, Dad, I did not feel abandoned. I felt safe. I knew exactly where you were every night, and I knew why. Half the kids I grew up with did not know where their father was at all. 40 years, gentlemen. 40 years of a wound I had been tending completely alone, and one sentence from the only person who could have told me the truth dissolved it in about 4 seconds. And then he told me something I had never known. He said that when he was about 11, he used to wait up on Friday nights just to hear my truck in the driveway. Not to talk to me, just to hear it, and then he could sleep. I had come home to a bleak house 900 Friday nights believing nobody noticed I was gone. And the whole time, there was a boy upstairs listening to the engine. That is what these conversations do. Most of the pain that families carry is not shared pain. It is 2 people in 2 separate rooms, each carrying half of something that would weigh nothing if they set it on the same table. And then, about 40 minutes in, he said the thing I still cannot repeat without stopping. The third thing was a question, and it undecided me. He looked at me and he said, Dad, are you afraid? That was all. 4 words. He meant about dying, about being 78, about all of it, and nobody in all my years had ever asked me that. Not my doctor, not my friends, not my own wife, God rest her, because we protected each other from that subject for 50 years. My son asked me if I was afraid, and I told him the truth. I said, sometimes, not of the end so much, of the part before it, of being a burden, of not knowing anybody in the room. And he reached across that table and put his hand on my arm and said, You will know somebody in the room. That is the whole exchange. 4 words from him, 30 from me, 7 back. But I want you to understand what that did. Every man watching this has that fear, and every man is holding it alone at 2 in the morning, because we were raised to believe that speaking it aloud is a weakness and a burden on our families. It is not a burden. My son did not need protection from my fear. He needed to know it existed so he could put his hand on my arm. I slept differently after that night. I have slept differently ever since. So here is what I want you to do with all of this. You do not need to plan a big conversation. Do not invite your child over for a talk that will terrify everybody and it will fail. Every important conversation I have ever had happened sideways, during dishes, in a truck, at a workbench, with nobody looking at anybody. You need 1 sentence. And the sentence must come from you because your child cannot go first. Any of these will open the door. I got a lot of it wrong and I know it. There is something I have never told you. Can I ask you something I should have asked years ago? Or the simplest one, which works with any child of any age. I am proud of you. I should have said it more. Then stop talking. Let silence do the work. Whatever comes next will be worth every quiet second. And I will warn you about that silence because it is where most men lose their nerve. It will feel long. 10 seconds will feel like a minute. Every instinct you have will tell you to fill it with a joke or change the subject back to the truck. Do not. That silence is the sound of your child deciding whether you meant it. Be ready for 2 rules. First, when they tell you what hurts, do not defend. No receipts. Say, you should have heard it from me, and mean it. Second, tell them one true thing about yourself that they do not know. Not the highlight reel. A real one. A fear, a regret, something you got wrong. That is the entire method. 1 sentence to open, no defending, 1 true thing back. That October evening was 7 years ago now. Michael is 57. And I want to tell you what changed because it was not just one nice night. We are talking now. Really talk. He tells me about his marriage. He asked my advice last spring about his own son, and I gave it, because now he asks. He calls on Sundays, and it is not a duty call, and neither of us pretends the weather is what we are discussing. And there is something else I did not expect. He started doing it with his own boy. My grandson is 19 now, and I have watched my son say things to that young man that took me 78 years to learn how to say. 1 hour at my kitchen table skipped a whole generation ahead. 40 years of pleasant nothing, and then 1 hour that turned into 7 years of something real. That hour cost me nothing but the courage to admit, aloud, to my own child, that I did not know what I was doing. Gentlemen, your son is waiting. Your daughter is waiting. They have been waiting a long time, and they will keep waiting, because they cannot open that door from their side. Only you can. And you can do it tonight over dishes with one honest sentence. Do not make them say it at your funeral. Say it at the kitchen table while you can still hear the answer. You have earned your peace. Some of it is sitting across the table from you, waiting to be invited in. If this spoke to you, subscribe, because next I'm telling you about the hardest year of my life, the year after my wife passed, and the 4 things that got me through it. If you have lost someone, or you are afraid of the day you will, that one is for you. Take care of yourself. I will see you in the next one.